right, good morning and thank you for joining us this morning. I'm Rob Pitts. I chair the Board of Commissioners of Fulton County, and I'm joined by members of our delegation to the Georgia General Assembly, led by State Senator Jen Jordan, who's here, and you'll hear from her, Representative David Dreyer, who heads the House side of our delegation, and you'll hear from other members as well. Let me get right to the point. We're here because the big lie is still alive and well. But none of us should have to be here today still defending our elections from the big lie more than 9 months after the election took place. We in Fulton County conducted a very successful election last year, and it was recognized as such even by the Secretary of State and Mr. Carter Jones, who was his representative, who audited our elections and found that there was no malfeasance whatsoever. No malfeasance whatsoever. So what's changed from that time to now? Well, it's real simple. Secretary of State has fallen out of favor with then President Trump and his crowd, and he's doing everything that he can to curry favor with them in order to get reelected, which I don't think is going to happen. Yet he continues to bash Fulton County and the great job that we did, and we're simply not going to stand for it. This is partisan politics, appeasing to those who buy into the big lie. Now, this attempted takeover and the big lie is a cynical ploy to sow seeds of doubt in our democracy, just so some of those who've fallen out of favor with the former president can try to hold on to power. They don't want you to know that the votes were counted 3 times, one time by hand, with no evidence whatsoever of malfeasance. They don't want you to know that our elections process was monitored by the Secretary of State's office and observers from both political parties with no evidence of intentional wrongdoing. Now, I've been through a lot of elections in my career, and there's never been a perfect election. Human error is always possible. They want to dupe you into thinking that something happened in Fulton County so that they can use Senate Bill 202 to conduct a hostile takeover of our elections and appease believers of the big lie. But I know that voters won't be fooled by this partisan plot. They know the truth. Our elections were open, they were transparent, and they were fair. We can't let them get away with this, not in broad daylight, certainly without a fight, because if political games are the reason they decide to take over, who knows what they'll do once they're in. I will never let the conspiracy theorists and proponents of the big lie take away the voices of Fulton's voters. I will continue to fight for Fulton County. Now I'd like to ask Representative Dreyer and/or Senator Jordan to come up with remarks as well.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is State Senator Jen Jordan, and I represent a large part of Fulton County, specifically the Chastain area, Buckhead, and Sandy Springs. I am the chair of the Fulton County delegation, the legislative delegation, and I am here today to specifically address the attempt to take over the local county elections board of Fulton County. I want to start specifically by talking about what we need to know about the takeover provisions. This isn't just about triggering some kind of investigation. The state election board now under SB 202 can, on its own motion alone, take over the local election board in Fulton County. And let's be clear, they are an unelected board at the state level, controlled by partisans and appointed by partisans who are not accountable to the people of this state and certainly are not accountable to the people of this county. And so many people at home are asking, why are we sounding the alarm on this? What's the big deal? Isn't this just some kind of procedural thing? Don't we want elections to run smoothly? Absolutely. But you know how you do that? You do that by working with the elections board, not, throwing them out and putting your own partisan in its place. It's so important because the local elections board, you know what they do? They set the early vote times, the hours, the days, the precincts, the things that make it easier for people to vote. They also determine which absentee application are we going to honor, which one are we not? Which absentee ballot are we going to count, which one are we not? And we know when you have very slim margins in an election, especially like we just saw in the presidential, that doing that around the margins can absolutely affect the outcome of the vote. And what we'll see is that we'll have official election results that do not reflect the will or the votes of the people of this state. Look, the way I look at a local election board is that they're like an election referee, right? They're supposed to be the people that are calling the balls and strikes, and they really aren't supposed to be there for one side or the other, okay? And we've worked very hard to try to make sure that to the extent there is partisan involvement, that it is balanced, because we want people to trust the process and trust that they're legitimate. No one wants a referee to be for one team or the other. No one wants that. Look, I think the GOP is playing a very dangerous game, and they think keeping political power is way more important than actually protecting the fundamental right to vote. As a chair of the Fulton County delegation, I can promise you that we have been pushing whenever there's been an issue with Fulton County elections. We have worked with the county, we have worked with the elections board to actually try to fix it and try to remedy it. Do we all remember the June primaries when there were long lines? What did we do? We tried to fix the problem. And in November, not a single person waited more than 30 minutes. And in fact, most people didn't wait at all. That was a very intentional effort by the delegation, by the Fulton County Commission, and by the Elections Board to remedy something that had been pointed out that they weren't really doing well. That's what we need to do. That's what we need to do. And our delegation, we're going to work with Fulton County, and we're going to make sure that the elections process in Fulton County continues to get better, so that not only will November, with the historic turnout numbers in the middle of a pandemic that went so well, that won't be the high watermark, that we will continue to do better so that we can't even pick around the edges in terms of things that really didn't impact the election at all. And I want to have Representative Dreyer to come up and talk from the House perspective.
I'm Representative David Dreyer from House District 59. I also chair the Fulton House delegation. This partisan attempt to take over the Fulton Election Board is a sham. I personally monitored Fulton elections last year, from the registration to the precincts to the absentee ballot tabulation. And though there are areas for improvement, on the whole, I witnessed a free and fair and orderly election. Independent election experts, including some that monitored the elections throughout the whole cycle, have unequivocally said Fulton administered its elections without any fraud and without any malfeasance. I want to say that again. There was no fraud and there was no malfeasance in Fulton's election administration. This is just a political sham to demonstrate fealty to Trump and his big lie about the election, because they cannot accept the results. This is purely to curry favor with a small number of Trump voters in Georgia that cannot accept that the majority of Americans have rejected their agenda. Georgia should be better than this. And as chair of the Fulton House delegation, I can say to you unequivocally that we will do everything we can to fight this partisan and unnecessary takeover attempt of the Fulton Election Board. Next, we're going to hear from Representative B. Wynn, then Vice Chair of the Fulton House delegation, Representative Derek Jackson, and then Representative Roger Bruce.
Good morning. I'm State Representative B. Wynn, and I represent House District 89. When Republican lawmakers passed Senate Bill 202 earlier this year, we knew that the state takeover provision was the most dangerous provision in this bill. And we knew that provision was specifically aimed at Fulton County, the most populous county and one of the most diverse counties in Georgia. This is a partisan power grab that violates the spirit of local control, and it fundamentally changes the checks and balances that currently exist to ensure that bipartisan local election boards do not become political arms of partisan-led legislatures. Yesterday, former U.S. Attorney Republican B.J. Pak provided hours of testimony to the U.S. Senate Judiciary Committee. In his testimony, he reaffirmed that investigations into Fulton County by state officials and the FBI did not yield any evidence of voter fraud. The independent observer sent by the Secretary of State's office found no evidence of voter fraud. It simply does not exist. Republicans are acting in bad faith because they did not like the results of the election. This is evidenced by the passage of Senate Bill 202, which will only hamper the ability of local election boards to run efficient elections, and this is not exclusive to just Fulton County. Republicans eliminated private grant funding that both Republican and democratically controlled local election boards received in 2020 and in 2021 to purchase more equipment and to provide hazard pay for election workers. Republicans shortened the time frame to process absentee ballot applications. Republicans prohibited local election boards to proactively send out absentee ballot applications to voters. And Republicans banned mobile voting units that were used to make it more accessible for seniors and those with disabilities to vote. Republicans also drastically reduced the availability of secure drop boxes, which were widely popular with voters on both sides of the aisle. None of these changes will help any of our local election boards. What we really need is a takeover of the Secretary of State's office. The Secretary of State continues to deflect accountability and responsibility by laying blame on Fulton County. He has had ample time as a leader to be a partner with our local election boards. And instead of coming to the table as a collaborative partner, he is propagating to a base who continues to threaten the lives of election workers in Fulton County, who continues to undermine our democracy by upholding the big lie. Georgians deserve better.
Good morning, my fellow Georgians. I am State Representative Derek Jackson, and I represent District 64. I'm also the Vice Chair of the Fulton County House delegation. I am a husband, a father, a grandfather, a retired naval officer, and a proud voter in the great state of Georgia. In my 22 years of serving this country in the United States Navy, I was fortunate enough to have been transformed through the power of great leadership. The common thread among great leaders is selfless kind of servant leadership, where you put your family, your constituents, and your direct reports first. And the decisions you make as a leader is based on what's best for them. Senate Bill 202 does not meet this description. What we're seeing in Georgia right now is misdirected energy, focused on the wrong things. This unnecessary voting overhaul and voting takeover that the Republicans like is nothing more than a solution in search of a problem that does not exist. Instead of playing politics of Georgians' right to vote, we should be removing politics for from our pandemic response and working to save lives in Georgia. Instead of drawing zigzag district lines that allow politicians to choose their voters, we should be advocating H.R. 1 for the People Act and H.R. 4 John Lewis Voting Rights Act in Washington, D.C., so that Georgians can choose their best representatives that meet their interests. Instead of being focused on driving toward a bright future for the state of Georgia in the post-pandemic, Republican leadership is still looking in the rear-view mirror at the last election. This effort to take over Fulton County or any other county's Board of Election, even when the results of multiple recounts and audits, all been which paid by taxpayers, all of which have been affirmed that these were the safest and most accurate elections we have ever had in Georgia. Georgia deserves better. We have COVID cases right now on the rise once again, and our hospitals are overwhelmed. And Georgia leaders, Republican leaders, have their heads stuck in the sand. ICU bed shortages and increased loss of life are inevitable if we do not change course. Working families in Georgia are struggling to survive because Republican leadership removed their unemployment benefits, putting families at risk. But our leaders do not appear to have that focus on their mind, which is the reason why I'm running for lieutenant governor. It is out of my desire to help all of us to help move Georgia forward in the right direction. It seems that the primary focus of today's leadership is to control votes for the next election. They remind me of someone who's on a sinking ship, desperately looking for suntan lotion, instead of doing the right thing. A takeover is unconstitutional. A takeover is anti-democratic. A takeover is anti-patriotic. Georgia deserves better, and it starts with federal voting rights legislation, and so that every vote from every eligible Georgian is counted, and the votes are not changed after the people have spoken. Georgia deserves better.
Got to put on the glasses here, hang on. I'm State Representative Roger Bruce, and I represent District 61, which is South Fulton County, Douglas County, and Cobb County. And the state of Georgia is following the national Republican blueprint to disenfranchise voters. While we may not have men wearing white robes, terrorizing people as they go to vote, or poll taxes and literacy tests, this effort to take over local election boards because you don't like the outcome of an election takes us back in time to a place where those things did in fact exist. We live in America. America has a democratic form of government. At the root, the base of democracy is the fundamental right and the responsibility to vote in an open and honest process. The Republican effort to take over and control the outcome of future elections in Fulton County is a statement. It is a statement that the Republican Party and some of its members no longer want to believe in or to support our form of democratic government. To pass a law that allows you to take over a local board of election because they certify an election that you did not win, and then disregard the results, that takes away from the will of the people and is not a democracy. That is not America. That is Russia. That's North Korea. That is not America. While no one wants to label this as an action as racism, that is exactly what it is. Black citizens and women had to fight long and hard for the right to vote. And these current voter suppression laws that are being passed across the country take us back to a place in time that nobody wants to go back to.
let's call it what it is. A strong black turnout will likely cause a change in the power in this state. Donald Trump is scared the Republican Party and some of its members into believing that there's something wrong with working together, sharing the power, and making sure that every citizen in this state is properly represented. Let's not let that happen. Let's make sure that we all go out, that we all go vote, and that we make sure that the citizens of Fulton County have an opportunity to cast their votes in a safe, in a reliable, and an honest system. Thank you very much. Representative David from Bazemore will follow me.
Thank you and good morning. I am State Representative Deborah Bazemore, and I serve District 63 and also serve as the Chief Deputy Whip for the Democratic House Caucus. And I'd like to thank all of my colleagues that so eloquently laid out what this bill means, the repercussions of this bill. What I want you to do now, if you would close your eyes and listen with your ears to the details of Senate Bill 202. At that point, would you believe that you live in the United States of America? And to add insult to injury, the Republicans in the House and Senate in Georgia have proudly been named the first to take over Board of Elections while ignoring local control and being fiscally responsible, which they tout all the time. Restrict and confuse and make it more difficult for black and brown people to vote. This despite the fact our ancestors were jailed, shed blood, and died for a free and fair right to vote. And I just want to leave you with this, a charge. Make a plan. Don't wait until next year. Educate yourself on the new restrictive rules in Senate Bill 202 and follow it to the letter of the law. Make sure your voice is heard and your vote is counted. And we as legislators will do everything to ensure that happens.
All right, that was our last speaker, so we'll take questions from any of you who have questions. But before we begin the Q&A, just look at this picture. Look at it. That's the state of Georgia. That's Fulton County. That's Atlanta. Look at it. Any questions for any one of us?
So besides speaking out against this bill, as lawmakers, what can you do about it?
Well, we've got to continue to speak out and educate people because there will be another election. And when someone passes something in this building that takes the rights away from people, we're going to fight and we're going to tell the story until there's another election, and then there's going to be a changing of the guard. But in addition to this, there will be legal recourse with the courts. And then a third point is we are continuing to investigate. Senator Jordan, myself, and the members of the House and Senate delegation are sending an open records request. SB 202 requires that there be rules and regulations for an investigation of a county election board. There are none. So we will continue to fight and advocate, and we will participate in any legal proceedings if we need to.
So our intention is to have a hearing. Sorry. Our intention is to have a hearing and to address some of the allegations that have been brought up in the letters by the Republican legislators sent to the state election board of trying to trigger the process. But apart from that, there are many cases that have been filed. One in particular is challenging the takeover provision, and it is in federal court right now. I am watching that very closely, and We'll see what the federal court does with respect to that. But at the end of the day, it's also about making sure people understand the impact of the law, and also shining a light on whatever is going on so that this is going to be done in broad daylight. So if they're going to take over in a very partisan way a local elections board, at least the voters of this state are going to be able to see and know exactly what it is.
Chairman, what has Fulton done? What's Fulton done since the November election and since the January runoff to improve its election processes to maybe rebut some of the complaints and allegations that may come forward?
Well, we meet almost weekly to look at ways to improve. And I think I said during my opening remarks that I've been involved in quite a few elections throughout my career, and there's never been a perfect election, and there never will be one. We're open for suggestions. We know that we're not perfect. But we also know that there was not one iota of malfeasance back in 2020. So if that's the case, what is this all about? What is SB 202 about? It's about the 2022 elections and about the 2024 elections. 2020 elections rather, those votes have been counted. Not one time, not two times, not three times. One time by hand. Results eerily the same. So that being the case, what is this all about? It's about sowing this seed of doubt for 2022 and 2024. If they can continue with this big lie, that's what this is all about. So, but it's not going to succeed. We have these ladies and gentlemen here who represent us, do a great job representing Fulton County, and we stand united, we will prevail. They may have won a victory, but we will win the war.
And just to add to your question and response, if you look at what Fulton County did, if you look at June 2020, right, we all can say that it was a nightmare. But immediately, Fulton County went into action, and within 3 months, the November 2020 was remarkable. I mean, the lines were down to a minimum where people were in line for 10 to 12 minutes. Compared to hours and hours and hours of June 2020. And so this was without Senate Bill 202. Fulton County took it upon themselves to make the necessary corrections. They learned from those lessons learned, and you can see the difference within 3 months from June 2020, that nightmare, to what took place in November 2020, where the wait lines, stay time was significantly less, and the results of all the audits clearly demonstrated that Fulton County, without Senate Bill 202 in place, did the right thing for the citizens of Fulton County.
Any other questions? If not, thank you very much for attending.